find an audience for user research. And this is primarily for products that are new to the market. Let's say you don't have a user base yet, you are still trying to confirm your hypothesis, or it's a new product basically, or maybe it's a product that's already existing in another market. Say for example, if a product that does not exist in Nigeria but is existing in the US and they are trying to come into the Nigerian market, you want to conduct user research because the American market and the Nigerian market are completely different. And so you need to conduct user research to understand what kind of features you want to use, because even the small things like user behaviors now, for example, Nigerians behave differently with certain features as opposed to Americans, right? And so you have to speak to users to be able to understand how to launch such a product in Nigerian markets. A very good example of how different user behaviors in different markets is the recent fiasco with Paul Graham on X, right? And how he mentioned that if he sees words like delve, he assumes that it was ChatGPT written. And then Nigerians made a case for it, saying that we have a very verbose we have a very verbose vocabulary, and so we use a lot of terms, especially because we were colonized. There's just a lot of context to it, honestly, that the American market does not have this unique context that we have. And so imagine an American saying delve is a chat GPT word, and he will be flagging emails that contains those words. And in Nigerian, it's a normal word. Like we use delve regularly. And so it's just understanding your markets, and in a bit to understand your market, you have to speak to your users. And so now, where do you find your users? This is such a good question. Finding an audience to participate in user research is dependent on the nature of the products. For an existing product, since there's already a demographic interacting with your product, it's a bit easier to conduct user research. For example, an existing product with PiggyVest, for example, they already have a user base, or even a Kuda or a CarryWise, they have a user base. And so them conducting user research will be straightforward. They already have established channels of communication with their users, emails, social media, via the app. They already have a very engaging audience, and so for them to conduct a user research will be easier than a new product that is trying to penetrate the market. Now, for such a new product, you need to find first of all, you need to understand what kind of product are you launching. Are you launching a fintech? Are you launching a property tech? Is it a health tech? You have to understand, is it crypto? You have to understand what kind of product are you launching, and then that informs where you go to look for the audience for your product. Now, one way to find an audience for user research is leveraging communities whose members fit into your target demographics. Now, for example, let's say you are trying to launch a fintech tool that is targeted at young people, let's say within the age of 20 to 40-year olds, young Nigerians. A good way to find a target audience that will interact with your products is to join financial communities, right? Money Africa, for example, has a financial community. I'm sure there are others. You find a financial community that contains these young people that have your audience. Going on a platform like Twitter also is might be another way, but on Twitter you cannot engage, you cannot confirm that people will engage with your feedback tools. Let's say you're putting out a form or you're requesting for user interviews, you cannot confirm that on Twitter people will engage. That is why it's important to find tight knit or close communities that you are sure that the chances of them engaging with your user research tools are really high, which is why I recommended financial communities. There are also Slack communities where if you are a product manager, you're a product management professional, for example, there are a plethora of Slack communities that exist with young people like you. Now, they might not necessarily be finance oriented, but if you're trying to launch a fintech, there will definitely be young people who are usually early adopters of technology products. That is what data says, that younger people are early adopters. And so you go to these Slack communities and you put out your Google form, you put out your survey form, or you request for user interview from a couple of people, and some people will engage. Your chances of having a an engaging audience on those kind of platforms are much higher than going on social media and just putting something out, because people don't know you, people don't know your product. There is no incentive. Even if you put out an incentive that we're going to give a 3 month, 1 month free trial, or whatever incentive you put out, if they don't attach value to your product, they will still not find the incentive to be valuable enough. And so, for new products coming, trying to penetrate markets, a good places to find an audience to participate in your user research is to go and look for these tight knit communities, Slack communities, Telegram communities, Facebook communities. Look for these communities and put out your user research form, put out your survey form, try to speak to a couple of people. That some people will be kind enough to give you their time, especially if you are engaging and you're a valuable member of this. You cannot just go there and take it, give and take, right? You go there, you become a valuable member of the community, and then you ask for something. And I'm very sure that you find a couple of people that will engage with your tools. Now, you have to factor in your demographic in this strategy. However, you cannot say you are looking for 20 to 40-year-olds and then you're going to a community that has only boomers, so people that are pushing 50, 60. Your user research is not going to make any sense. Or let's say you're targeting 50 to 60-year-olds and you join communities where there are 20 to 30-year-olds, it will not make any sense. Whatever you research, whatever data you gather will not be valuable to your product. And so when you're looking for an audience, you have to factor into your demographic. What is the age of these people that you're looking? What do they do? Where do they go to? And then you share your survey form, you share your Google form, or you ask for a an interview with them. You just ask for a bit of their time. Note that when you're asking, again, I'm really categorizing new products and focusing on them, because I know that there are lots of entry level product managers on this course, and so the chances that you'll be managing a new product or a new feature is really high. Some of you will go on to volunteer for projects that have not yet penetrated the market. And so these are strategies that will be very, very beneficial to you. Now, you have to be conscious of people's time when you are requesting, even for existing products, to be honest. Regardless of whatever incentive you are giving your users, you have to be conscious of their time. You cannot call someone for a user interview and take 1 hour of their time. Make sure that you ask short questions, put it within a 30 minutes range. Worst case scenario, 30 minutes or 45 minutes. 45 minutes is a stretch, honestly. 30 minutes is just a good enough time to glean feedback, which means you have to be very strategic in the questions you ask. You can use things like ChatGPT, but be very careful to not just vomit, to not just use verbatim whatever ChatGPT vomits. So you might use ChatGPT to get your first draft of questions, and then you fine tune it to fit your product, and you're interacting with a human. So you have to also take all of these things into consideration, but don't take people's time when conducting user interviews. 30 minutes, ask straightforward questions. Even when you're trying to ask open-ended questions, try to still be on the mark in terms of the conversation. And then you can also leverage your personal network, things like WhatsApp. if you are launching this can be very helpful if you are launching a product that is within your age group. So let's say you are in your 30s and you're trying to launch a product that are targeted at Gen Z and millennials, which means your age group is also in that pool, right? You can leverage your own personal network. You can share a form to your friends. You can share a form on your WhatsApp story. Make sure it's anonymous because you don't want to be careful. You want to be careful when you are using your personal network for user research because there's the tendency that because these people know you personally, they might not give you very honest feedback. There's that eventuality. It can very much happen. They have a bias to you, so maybe they want your product to succeed or they want to please you or make you happy. And so you need to share anonymous. You need to let them know that, listen, this is an anonymous feedback. I'm not going to know who responds or what your name is. And that frees people up to be honest with you, even if they know you, right? Knowing that, okay, because they don't want you to take offense. They're on your personal network. And so you need to put out anonymous form if you are going to leverage your personal network, and then encourage people to share very, very honest feedback. And I will recommend that if you are going to leverage your personal network, try to ask open ended questions as opposed to leading questions. So leading questions are questions that the answer will always inevitably end up as your product being the answer to their problem. You don't want to ask leading questions because that doesn't help you. You want to ask open ended questions where you're focusing more on the problem at hand as opposed to your products as the solution to their problem. I hope that makes sense. And then yes, you leverage your personal network. And these are ways to find engaging audience who will be willing to help you gather the relevant information needed for your product. If you already have an existing product, you can do things like social listening, which is you go on social media, type your products, not your handle, just type your products or type hashtags that are related to your products and see what people are saying about your product. You can also, some people will even voluntarily, if you have a very, very engaging user base and your product has, found a loyal audience, some of your users will volunteer feedback to you without even asking. And so those are things that you take into cognizance. There's something called a backlog, which is, we'll cover it eventually, but it's just this feedback that you get, you log it on your backlog, and then that use that to inform your features so you are able to optimize your products better. We'll cover what a backlog is consequently. Now, ethical considerations in user research. It can just feel like user research is just okay, you send a form or you call your users and you get on a call and then you people just talk. But there are things to consider when you are conducting user research. As a product manager, your goal is to solve your user's problem with your product, and this thought process carries through every single stage of product development, including when conducting user research. Remember, in week one, I mentioned that at the core of your responsibility as a product manager is you are solving your user's problem. The moment your product stops to solve a problem for your user, then you might start to run into issues, right? And it can look differently. For fintechs in Nigeria, they I know a couple of them say they are trying to bank the unbanked. That's a very significant problem that they are trying to solve. There are remittance products that are trying to solve the remittance issues that Nigerians in diaspora are having. That's a unique problem they're trying to solve. And so your product at the end of the day falls into a category of problem solving, and you have to always factor that in when you are trying to put out products, when you're conducting user research. And then you so that informs that problem solving mindset informs your user research philosophy. Now, the Nelson Norman Group, who are considered to be the world leaders in research based user experience, defines ethical research as the act of carefully considering the rights, well being, and dignity of people involved in research activities. So, what they are saying is that it is not just something as mundane or something like just okay, you wake up, you go and speak to user and you gather information without any thoughts for their well-being or their dignity. You do not talk to users in a disrespectful manner. Even if you are offering an incentive, you cannot be entitled to their time. And this thing sounds like a no-brainer, but we are humans, and there are times when maybe you're a bit frustrated, you're not making headway on what you want, and you might be tended to, maybe you're speaking with a difficult user or a user who is not comfortable with communication, and so they are unable to process or condense their thoughts, they're unable to articulate their thoughts, and you're getting a bit frustrated, and there might be this urge to snap, but you can't do that because you have to consider that they are giving you their time, and so you have to rein in that human instinct in, and be patient with your users, be patient with them, consider their well-being, consider their dignity, consider their privacy, and we'll get into that later. But for the context of this course, there are multiple bullet points under ethical considerations in user research. But for the purpose of this course, we only address the bullet points that aligns with conducting user research as a product manager and how to engage in an ethical manner. Because yes, like I said, you have to engage in an ethical manner. We are professionals. Now, you have to be transparent. Be transparent with the users about the purpose of whatever information you are gathering. Don't lie to them. Excuse me. Don't lie to your users about why you are gathering whatever information you are gathering. Don't deceive them. Don't try to be smart, because what's being honest, aside the dignity of being honest with another person, there's also the honest response you get when you are transparent with your users, when you let them know that you might not, maybe your product is in stealth mode meaning it has not been revealed to the general public, so it's a brand new product, it's still under development, you don't want any buzz, maybe you don't want anybody to steal your idea, and that is something you are scared of, and so you cannot tell them the name of the product, or you cannot give them too much information. You need to find a way to give your users something, because most people will be curious. If I'm giving you my time, then I need something in return. I need to know that you can answer the questions that I am asking, right? If I'm giving you a bit of my time. And so you need to be transparent to users. If your product is still in stealth mode, you need to find a balance. Ask yourself, what can I share with these users that will not jeopardize my product? And then when you found the answer to that, you now have to find a way to communicate with users when they ask you questions. And let's say a user directly asks you, what is the name of your product, and you tell them, our product is still in stealth mode, but we will notify you once we are going live. And so in fact, this can even be your first set of users, because they have given you the time, especially when you conduct user interviews with survey forms and Google forms. It can be, because it's more quantitative data, there's not necessarily direct interaction, it's a bit indirect, so you can gather feedback without knowing who you're speaking to. But with user interviews, it's a bit because it's more direct, it's a bit personal, right? And so the users who you interview can easily become your first set of users, and even become your beta testers, right? So when your product is ready to go out into the general public, you can go back to these people that you interviewed to say, our product is ready, would you like to interact with it and share whatever feedback? You'll be surprised, because they've given you their time initially, and because of, depending on how you manage their time and manage the interview during the user interview process, they might be more willing to interact with your products. And so this is why you have to be transparent with them, and if possible, have their emails, keep in communication with them, so that they can become your early adopters, first set of users, or beta testers for your product. Now you have to be transparent about how the data you are gathering will be used for, and why it is being collated. You have to tell them, if you're going to share this data publicly, you have to tell them that we are going to share it publicly. You have to consider their own reservations about sharing it publicly because it is their information that is being shared, regardless of the fact that it is your product. I don't recommend conducting paid user interviews. I know some people do that, but I don't recommend it because they're not going to get honest feedback, and you need honest feedback to improve your product. So you can pay. I know there are platforms that they already have a user base and they pay people to participate in user interviews. That's a completely different conversation. But to pay somebody directly and say, I'm going to pay you if you are going to sit for an interview with me, that is wrong because first of all, they will be very biased. They know you. You're not even going through a third party. You're not going to get honest feedback, right? So don't pay people to participate in your user interviews. Be very very transparent about what their information that is being gathered will be used for and why you are collating it. Now if you're going to record user interview beforehand, inform them, tell them before the call that I'm going to record this, or when they get on the call, don't record once they get on the call. Tell them that you're about to record and ask for their consent. Some people don't want to be recorded. You don't want to allow people get on the video and then you're like, oh, we're recording this. So that is wrong. You don't do that. You ask for people's consent beforehand if you're going to record. This is something that I know Google Meet does. If you get on a Google meeting and they're going to record, or the call is being recorded before you join, let's say the call has started and is being recorded and you want to join, Google Meet will inform you that it is being recorded. You want to join anyway. That is an ethical consideration that they have factored into building that product, right? You want to let people know that they are being recorded. Don't record people without their consent. It is wrong. Now you have to be neutral. When asking users questions, attempt for neutrality in your tone, facial expressions, body language, especially as doing the opposite might influence users to share what they believe you are looking to hear rather than being utterly honest. So now, for example, let's say you are conducting structured interview, which means you already have a set of questions, a list of questions that you want to ask. No opportunity to factor in open-ended questions. You're not doubling down on a previous response. You're just going line by line over your questions, and then you ask a user, if you were going to rate our products between a 0 to 10, what would you rate us? And the user says, and 0 to 5 being low and 5 to 10 being high. And the user says, I rate your product a 2. And you frown. Some users would change their rating. And that doesn't help you. It doesn't help your products. It doesn't help the product team. It doesn't help anybody because now they've given you biased feedback based on your body language, or they say something negative about your products, and instead of asking them why with curiosity, you ask in a passive aggressive tone. Or let's say a user has been answering your questions and they've not been giving you answers that you like, and you become passive aggressive. The user will probably opt out of the interview, or if they do not opt out, they are going to say that they're going to start giving you responses that they think that you want to hear, just because they see that your body language or your tone or your facial expression is negative. Let's say you are frowning, right? And so you have to be, nobody's saying you should come on a user interview call and be smiling, but you need to try to be neutral, modulate your voice, modulate your facial expression, try to have a neutral facial expression, lead with curiosity. Be neutral but lead with curiosity. Do not be attached to your product. And it's easier said than done, because if you've been working on a product for a really long time, if you've given a product your blood, sweat and tears and you are hearing negative things about a product that you just put out, maybe this is your first launch and you're gathering feedback to improve your MVP. An MVP is a minimum viable product, and that is like the first iteration of the products that you put into the market, right? So now you've put out your MVP and you're conducting user interview to gather feedback to improve the general product, and users are saying very very negative, it is not even constructive feedback, it is just maybe rude or negative comments that they are making directly to you. it might be difficult for you to modulate your tone. It might be difficult for you to not become passive aggressive. But you need to remember that at the end of the day, whatever feedback you are getting is for the success of the product. It is not about you. And that's something that product managers need to learn, that a lot of the time the feedback that people are giving about your product is not about you, it is about the product. And then it is now when it you now come into play is when you now use that feedback to iterate your product. And when you know that you have done it properly is when you start to move from negative to positive feedback, and then you start to have a loyal fan base, and then you know that you have done a good job. So it's not necessarily about you. It's important to detach yourself from the product. It is important to detach yourself from the user interview and be neutral, because this is how you're able to get good feedback, and you ensure that you don't influence your users to give you feedback that is not true. Now, ethical considerations. The third point is consider privacy and data confidentiality. Users who consent to sharing their personal data with you expect their information to be managed properly and not published to the general public. Now, imagine that somebody filled out your form and they included personal information such as their name, their home address, their phone number, their email, and you share it on social media. Let's say it was not even a malicious intent. You wanted to share the feedback you have gathered, maybe in a report that the general public can consume. But as an oversight, or maybe because you've not just thought about it, you share the form as it is, inclusive of your user's personal information. That is wrong. Your users will be disgruntled. You are going to have very negative conversation about your products, because people are going to speak up against the fact that you share their personal information. In fact, nobody is going to be happy that you share their personal information on the internet. And so you need to be sure, or even maybe it's a user interview and it's a video call and they initially consented to be recorded. And then you don't tell them that you are going to share this video on the internet. So there's step one, which is consenting, and then there's step two, consenting to being recorded, and then there's consenting to being shared on social media. Some people can consent to be recorded for your personal, private product team, but they will not consent to being shared for whatever reason. Now, users who might have reservations about being shared on social media, you need to factor in their reservation and ask them, tell them that you are going to share certain things on social media, and then ask them what they are comfortable with being shared. And if there's a reason to publicly share data from your user research, endeavor to remove any personal information that might divulge their identity or personal information of the user to the public. If they don't want their identity to be shared in the public, you can blur their faces on the video. I've seen videos where you put out a user video and the speaker's face is blurred, and so nobody knows who's speaking, but you still have gotten your point across. So it's important to consider that you have to make concessions, certain concessions, because you there are ethical considerations to be made in user research. It is not just I've conducted a research and then without any thought or care for the dignity of the people involved, you just put things out because all you care about is your product. No, that doesn't help you. That doesn't help your product. That doesn't help your company. Because if your company has multiple products, what happens is once people have identified a specific hero product, and let's say your product is now the hero product of the company, once people have identified your products with the company, they see them as synonymous, right? And so whatever thing that might negatively impact your products might negatively impact other products that the company has launched. And so you're not just even now considering just your product, you're considering other products that exist, other product teams, your colleagues, you're considering the company as well, you're considering revenue, because these things can have a backlash. And so in conducting user research, we have to be ethical, we have to be considerate of the people we are speaking to, considerate of their well-being and their dignity.